Hello and welcome to our webinar today about understanding the impact of NIS2 on your business and the critical role of identity security. My name is Manuela Ollhäuser. I'm marketing manager at IC Consult. And before we dive into this interesting topic today, I'd like to share some technical details. All participants will be muted during the webinar, so there's no need for you to mute or unmute your microphone. We will record today's session, so you will all receive an email within the next few days with the link to the recording and the slides. And should you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to type them into the chat and we will answer them at the end of the webinar. Our speakers today are Klaus Hild, Principal Identity Strategist at SailPoint, and Dr. Ulrich Domröse, Senior Vice President Enterprise Identity Management at IC Consult. And yeah, now I will hand over to you, Uli.
Okay, thank you for the introduction, Manuela. And today we want to look a little bit more about what is NIS2, who is affected by this, and how can an IGA or IAM system help to fulfill the requirements of the NIS2 directive. With me is, as already said, Klaus Hild, who is working for one of the major vendors of IAM systems, for SailPoint. Maybe you want to say some additional words, Klaus?
Yeah, thank you, Ulrich. And as mentioned, as Manuel already mentioned, I'm working as an identity strategist for the company of SailPoint. I'm in this area for around more than 20 years, I would say. So hopefully we can add some more information, add some light in this dark shadows which sometimes come over when we're talking about NIS2. So we'll see if we can make more clearance on that.
Thank you, Klaus. So hopefully we will tell you everything what we can tell in 60 minutes and what you have to know about NIS2 and whether it will affect you at all. Let's have a look onto the timeline. NIS2 means that there is already a NIS directive, and this NIS directive was coming into effect in July 2016. This NIS directive had some disadvantages, which we will explain in another slide, and therefore there was a new way to have more concrete items on what does it mean to fulfill the security requirements, and therefore the NIS2 directive started in December 2020. It has been published on the 27th of December 2022, and it has to be implemented into country laws until the 17th of October 2024. So that means that's a very short time until then. And we are right in the time in between where you can read what is written in the directive and what you have to fulfill to be compliant to this directive. And at the 17th of October, it will become legal law in all European countries. So if we look into this directive, it has a lot of preambles, and one of the preambles is the preamble 89, which is shown here. And you can directly see that already in this preamble, it has been mentioned that besides the well-known zero trust principles, it's a very good idea to have an identity and access management in place, because that helps you to fulfill all the measures which are given in this directive. And therefore we would like to look into what is mentioned in the NIS2 directive and how can this be fulfilled by an identity and access management system. Having said that, I give to you, Klaus, what was the reason to set up this NIS2 directive?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Uli. There was a lot of reasons, of course, why they built up this NIS2 directive. Well, the first of all might be that not everything is caring about what was written down in NIS1. Yeah, so that means we have to be more precisely on that. And also they open up the measurement for the companies. So that means with NIS2, we have 10 times more companies which are reflected on that, and we will have a slide on that too. But the first is that we have insufficient levels of understanding and consistency. That means not everyone was really clear in terms of what did you mean I have to control access? So what is that controlling access? Should I show me something that is allowed to access somewhere? And what exactly do you mean by access? Is it just open a door, or is it really that I can read or write in a folder, things like that? That was one thing. Then the other point was the lack of joining crisis response. So the responding on a breach. So how can I treat with that? And this is one big part that you have to, so in terms of in 24 hours, you have to react somehow to inform someone. And at least inside of 72 hours, you have to yeah, let's say to open the issue and say, well, we get breached, and this is how companies or what data is inflected on that breach. And believe me, 27 hours, this is so quick if you haven't breached. If you come Monday morning to work and nothing works anymore because everything is encrypted, it's not that easy to inform someone inside of 27 hours because you do not have even email anymore. So that is a thing which sounds easy if everything is working, but if nothing is working, and keep this in mind for a moment, nothing is working anymore in your company, how could you inform someone that things are going bad? This is not that easy. Yeah. So, and little common understanding of the main threats. So that means what the hell is a threat? So when something gets lost, is this because I delete something and I can't make I can restore it because backup is done by everyone, but restore is only a few people who can really do that. You know what I mean? So this is the understanding of, is this done by restore, or do we have to be more in understanding what is the main threat? So these are where the NIS2 directives adds a little bit more precisely on that, what should really happen. Would you, the next slide, would you go ahead with that?
Yeah, I will explain a little bit more. So for some of the things mentioned here on this slide, we will have additional slides coming up. So I will not talk a lot about this, especially for extended scope or also for the obligations. But as you can see, some of the things mentioned here did more concrete formulations to the NIS directive. For example, what already Klaus mentioned is the reporting obligations which you have. We also have a slide for this. You need some special kind of risk management measures which you have to implement inside your company to ensure that you do not only react on a threat, that you also try to have some upfront behavior mechanisms to avoid that you can be breached. And this NIS directive is also related to further legal requirements like the Cyber Resilience Act or other local laws which may be valid inside the company you are living. So these are the most important differences between the NIS2 and the NIS directive, that it was much more concrete in what you have to do.
And of course, it costs more money.
Yes. So, what do you think about this question, Klaus?
Yeah, so this is just to give you an idea what we're talking about. So every time when we're talking about a breach, so everybody knows that the numbers are crazy high. If you it's always millions what we are talking about, and I'm pretty sure that the most of you might assume, well, millions. What do you find? Where do you living, guys? Yeah, so the never could be millions, but at the end, it's 5.5 billion euros, which might be the fee of that. And believe me, this is the number on the down lowest end. So there are different numbers in the market to talk about that. Yesterday I saw a number which was just double that number. It was over 10 millions. What they think, what it's about. So it depends a little bit who you are asking and what it's in account in the calculation. So we are talking about the identity management related breaches, what we see here in here. But believe me, so the numbers are more true than you might expect. So if you look for the data cost of a data breach report from IBM, which coming out every year, so they are now bringing it down to Europe, and in the different countries of Europe, if you're looking at that report, you will see that the numbers from the European companies or from the European countries are not much different to the USR or to Asia Pac. There is not much difference. So the million number is mostly the same. Only the hundreds behind the million number, there is a difference in between. So that means the costs are there. Believe it or not, the costs are there. So, but that means, how do this apply to us? So how can we react on that? So may I ask for the next slide, please? So you see, so I think the biggest thing which is coming with NIS2 is that you can be essential or you can be important. So both things has to be taken into account. So some kind which is called as critis on ours here in Germany as well, or in the European region is critis. So that means you are essential to some point when it comes to, you see it, energy, transport, banking. You all know that stuff. That's not really new to you. But we have now also the option that you are important. Means there are other critical sectors which are also be taken in account. And you see, sometimes it's not only the size of the company, you can be also important if you have only 20, 50 employees like that. But if the turnover is also what came in account. But if you, and this is the point, it's not only this basically, so if you are in energy or transport, but it's also, if you the next slide, just it's also the supply chain, which is related on that. So if you click sometime more, so the supply chain is even interested in that. So it doesn't make sense. Let's say if you are a one of the automotive players like VW or BMWs or the Mercedes-Benz in this country, but if you, so it's always the idea of the weakest piece of the chain. This is where the most impact is done. Yeah, that means everything in the chain has to be strong. And it doesn't make sense if one company does all the effort to be NIS compliant and do all the things for threat detection and access management and identity management and all this stuff, and has zero trust in place and all that stuff, and there is one supplier which don't care about that. So, and that leads to a, let's see, to a big hole whenever it comes to how this company could attend some or have some access in this major company. So that means the complete supply chain is under control and is under suspect to have a look at, is this completely true? And this is the reason why one of the biggest players asking their suppliers, are you also NIS2 compliant, or are you compliant at least in that what we expect from you? So there are some ideas behind that. So maybe you know TISAX, which is very related to the automotive industry, but this was a first step to they understand, well, we have to care about our own industry, and TISAX it's done. So you are free to do that, but there are 3 steps for TISAX, for example. So you have also something like a self-attestation in there. This is not longer doable with NIS2. So you have to fulfill that thing, and also the supply chain have to be cared of. So this is what really is the, let's say, the be more precisely on NIS2, what Ulrich already mentioned. So go ahead to the pillars, maybe, Ulrich. Yeah. You want to start with that? Or should I?
I can start with that. So
Yeah.
at least the most important thing of the NIS2 directive is the Article 21, who is telling you that you have to take 10 measures into account where you have to ensure that your security is also given, and if something happens inside your IT environment, that you will give notice to a governance part to tell them what happened inside your company, and therefore you have to do some additional steps up front to ensure that it will be hard for an attacker to come into your environment or to be able to breach something. So these 10 are the most important things which you have to take into account and to think about how to ensure that each of these 10 measures will be kept. So if we look onto these 10 ones, most of them are really related to identity management issues, and therefore we made them green here. So that means that We will have a look into that on some other slides a little bit later to think about what does it mean and how can an IAM system help me to ensure that I will keep these measures. At least some additional things might be.
I can take a little bit about that if you like. So this is when it comes to the. So you saw this. So we will have this tiles a little bit later on, and we'll more deep inside that. But to make a short translation of that, what that mean by if we're talking about this tiles. So there is a lot of zero trust in there. Maybe not full blown, but zero trust means trust no one, ask often or prove often who is in there. So just treat everyone as unsecure, and then make a process around that how you can be secure, so that everyone is talking about zero trust. You can spend a lot of time around zero trust, but what is essential for zero trust model, you need one single source of truth where you can go to and can ask for some access. So is this guy allowed to have this access, yes or no? And usually identity management system should hold this information. Yeah, that means every application in the company has to be connected on this IDM system. But this is all stuff which Ulrich and we talk this often enough to our customer. It's not enough to detect or to have a dozen or half a dozen or 2 dozens applications connected. All applications has to be connected. Also the shadow IT, if you know what I mean. Yeah, so this is a basic thing. And then you can come to a least privileged access model, because you can control who has which access, which helps you a lot when it comes down to control the access people should have or which they must have. Yeah? And you can bound this access to handle this easier in roles, which even makes it easier to control that in terms of certifications. And this is exact the next point, the access certifications, which helps you. And you can also separate the duties in there, because roles are easily to separate them, to say, well, if you have this access, then you don't have another one access. It could be split by departments or by job titles or by locations, or but all the identities or the attributes you have in the system, you can use that. And detect de-risking users. This is maybe very SailPoint single, I would say, because we're using AI for doing this. We call this outliers. We have a slide later on that. That means we can run over the whole system and we can show you which identities might be different from their peer group as others are. And then you can make a decision. So the human being, the real intelligence before the system, before the display, can make a good decision. Is this something I have to be care about? Yes or no? But the system helps you to find the differences, which is normally wise not doable when we're talking about millions of entitlements. So back to you, Ulrich, if you like.
Yeah, why is it so important? As already Klaus mentioned, the fines are right high. At least the minimum is 10 million euros you have to pay if you do not keep the NIS2 directives, or if you have a breach and you do not do not publish in time what happened inside your company, and we will come to this publishing obligations in a minute. The other way might be if you're a real big company, you think 10 million is not a lot, but then it's 2% of your annual worldwide sales. And of course, it's the number taken which is higher. So that means that for a big company, maybe 10 million is not a lot, but 2% of the annual worldwide sales is quite high. So that means at least that you have to pay a lot of money if you don't keep them. And that, on the other side, means that it is worth to invest some money to avoid to have to pay these fines.
Yeah, and Ulrich, just to make that crystal clear, that means if you got breached, you have all this money which you need to take back the reputation, to build back your systems, to pay back. So even if you don't pay, yeah, so this is another word, but another talking, I would say. But even if you have all this trouble with that, you have to pay this 10 million at least on top of that. Keep that in mind. Yeah. If this is strongly
Correct.
wrong what you're doing, so you keep nothing in place, you don't care about that, you will be punished twice at least. Yeah, so keep that in mind. And there are no exceptions anymore.
That's correct, Klaus. Thank you for this. And as Klaus already mentioned in the beginning, there are obligations on how you have to publish if something happens inside your company. So if you really have a breach or somebody has taken over some accounts and doing crazy things in your company, if this significant incident happens, within 24 hours, you have to inform that you have noticed that something is going wrong in your company, and you have to give that notice to your local authorities. That depends on the country, but in each country, an authority has to be defined to whom you have to deliver this information. Additionally, in 72 hours, you have to give more information about what happened, what was the reason for that, and what are the measures you are taking to avoid that additional things will happen. And at the end, in 1 month, you have to give a final report where you exactly describe what happened, what did you do to avoid it, or to build up your business again, what were the mitigation measures to avoid that this could happen again in the future, and what could be cross-border impact, which means that you are not the only one who are affected, but also somebody else could be affected. And that brings you back to the supply chain, what Klaus already mentioned, that this is also valid for all your suppliers. And maybe if a supplier is breached, that will have an impact on yourself. So that's very important that you keep in mind that it's not only related to yourself, it's also related to all your suppliers, that this has to be kept. So
And don't even think that you might be finished after a month with all that stuff. So this is the reporting chain you have to respond to. So it will you take till a year till you're done with all that stuff. So
and it doesn't include what you have to do to avoid.
Exactly. It's just the reporting string, nothing else. So you will never be finished after a month, believe me.
So now the question is not only knowing what NIS2 now means, how does an IGA system now help you to keep the measures and to avoid that something happens? So from that point of view, we come back to the measures which we already mentioned some slides ago, and we want to have a detailed look into each of them and how an IGA system will help. Klaus, of course, if you think that you would like to add something to one of the points, you can break me and spring into it and tell something. First of all, policies on risk analysis, information system security has to be kept. That's clear because in an IGA system, especially in SailPoint, you have special things implemented which helps you here. One is the risk module, which enables you to analyze and find out the risk before they lead to any kind of damage. And the second is that you have a lot of policies which you can place inside the system to keep the rules. I'm not talking about SOD because that's something which will be mentioned on another slide, but policies and rules to ensure that nothing will be assigned to a person who's not allowed to do something, so to keep the least privilege principle. Next would be the supply chain. And of course, that means that also identities or accounts of the supplier will be able to access something inside your system. So besides the fact that the supplier itself has to ensure that he keeps the NIS2 directive, what can you do on your side to ensure that if something happens on the supplier side, that will not directly affect you, to avoid the cross-border effect, which I mentioned before. So it's a good idea to have also the partner, the contractor, the supplier identities inside your system and having the same rules and policies set up for them so that they are handled in the same way how you handle your internal employees, and also doing the same for the external employees. So also having a life cycle for all these identities, like for your internal employees, which is more complicated because for the internal employees, everything is triggered by your HR system. But for the external identities, it's much more harder to find out how to ensure that, for example, a partner is no longer working for your supplier so that you close the account for this partner. Therefore, you have to implement new processes and including all supplier identities into the life cycle, which can be done very nicely with SailPoint because SailPoint has a non-employee lifecycle management module so that it's very easy to ensure that these identities are handled by the same mechanism and way as internal employees.
Yeah, or they are sometimes handled a little bit different comparing to the internal employees because they have maybe a different life cycle, or they have to be double checked or double proofed in terms of that thing. But at least that you can do that you can customize whatever you need for your external employees. That was the reason. And only in that very moment when you give some of those external employees a right to work, so a work order, let's say, or a statement of work or whatever it is, then in that very moment, they will get access inside of your identity management system. So yeah, it's an important thing to keep that different. You're correct.
So additionally, the policies and procedures to assess effectiveness. So that means that you also have to monitor and to ensure that all your policies are kept. So it's not enough to have the policy written on paper. You also have to ensure that the policies are really kept inside your company. And of course, if you are doing this with an IGA system, that's easily done because normally you have scheduled your jobs which are checking that the policies are fulfilled. You have mechanisms to correct data, and therefore it's very easy to hold them. Coming back to the supply chain, you can say if you have a recertification of all external accounts, it will be ensured that at least, let's say, once in a year, somebody has a look onto an external identity and will say, yeah, it's still correct that this external identity exists in your system because he's still working for my company. It's mentioned that you have to keep the cyber hygiene practices, and that's also something which is hardly to understand. What does it mean? But at least you have some kind of rules and policies you set up, but you cannot ensure that even if you have set up the identity correctly, the attributes and the accesses will be kept right all over the lifetime of the identity. Therefore, automatic cleaning procedures are a good idea, which will run over the records and ensure that everything is right. So even if an administrator is doing something wrong in a target system, in a reconciliation process, it will be found out that the policy is no longer kept, and then you can implement automatic or manual steps to ensure that the data will be brought back to the right policy which you defined at the beginning. Additionally, that means that you have to train the people who are working with these systems to ensure that they also know what they have to do and they keep the policies. So training is also a very important factor in keeping this directive. And at least it's mentioned HR security access control policies. And that's also very clear if I have an IGA system in place. Normally, the HR data system is my single source of truth for everything what is going on. So if somebody leaves the company, I don't have to take care manually that all the accesses are closed and the accounts are deleted. An IGA system will take over this procedure for me and do it automatically and delete the assignments of rights or close the accounts. But additionally, if somebody changes his department, also on this process, the accesses which are assigned to a record because being part of the old department will be deassigned by an automatic control, and therefore you don't have to be afraid that something will not take place because somebody is forgetting something, because we know that the human factor is normally the most important cause for an error in those procedures.
Yeah. So
Anything to add from your side, Klaus?
This enforces the idea of from Gartner, so having no standing rights when a user is leaving, things like that. So not just disable the account, but just get rid of all rights from the account and maybe put him in a different OU in AD, for example. So this is what we can do, and it's done by the system automatically in the leaver process. And we all know that the leaver process is much more important than any other process, because there is no one which phones you up after 4 weeks and say, well, I can still access something. That will not happen. We all know that. Yeah. So the leaver process is really, really important to have complete control over that. So, and of course, this is also working when you have more than one HR data system. Yeah, what the most bigger companies have. So we all know that, but we can take care of that. But again, like Ulrich mentioned, the HR system should be the single source of truth where we know that real and good data are coming from.
Okay, now we have seen that theoretically an IGA system is a good idea to keep the most of these measurements and the NIS2 directive. So maybe we can have a look into real examples and think about how it really looks in real world, Klaus. So maybe you can give some insights here.
Yeah, we'll do. So it's just to give an idea how this might look like. Yeah, so it's not that it's only done with our product. So just to make that clear, so there are a lot of products out there we can do that, but it's not just the product which you need. It's also the team behind the product and the idea how things might be fulfilled. But if you even if you know where you want to go, what you want to reach, if you have a big picture in mind, at least you have to know where you are starting from. And we have this maturity assessment we have out there for, I think, now 2 years around that. So there's also a nice report how at least our customers are dealing with this maturity approach and what they find in there. And so if you might look out on that website, so that are 6 simple questions. It's not that you get bashed with marketing stuff from us when you ask for that. It's just for you that you can have an arrangement. Where are you? And the most companies, and so this is an old measurement, but we still found that around 44, 45, 46% of new prospects are sitting still in Horizon 1. Over the last 2 years, we have a rise up in the numbers in Horizon number 3. Most of them coming from Horizon number 2, jumping into Horizon 3, and we have at least 1% around in Horizon 5. Indeed, so we have something there. So there is a whole report about that. It makes sense to read that because it's completely free of any kind of product measurements. It's not related on any kind of product. It's just how you handle your processes. Because keep in mind, identity management is not IT. It's a process which will happen if you like it or not. So you are free how many control you want to have over this process. And maybe I can give you some ideas on that. So may I ask for the next slide? So the first thing which often we add is automation. So automation is where you can make your biggest effort and your biggest wins when it comes to more productivity, to productivity gains and things like that. The best thing what you can do is automation. And we get a lot of questions for automation. So comparing, let's say 10 years ago, everybody's talking about self-service, so giving more rights to the users to do things. But now they are asking for more automation, and we take this in account. So that means working with input, we have a lot of workflows which are automatically inside of the product. So when it comes for approvals, for example, it's nothing where you have to program any code, any line. So it's just who should be included in an approval, for example, what should be improved, is there a comment needed, yes or no, and you are good to go. So this is all what you have to do. This is the built-in workflow. It's quick, it's easy, it's a standard thing. And yes, you can also customize more complicated things if needed. Sometimes this is needed. We know that, yeah. So if it is a workflow engine where you can do much more, but even the workflow engine is just more or less code-free. Yeah, you have to put in the right the right attributes, and you have to know how to write these attributes, but this is not coding. Yeah, this is just, even if you write an Excel macro, you have to know how you build in the orders in there. Yeah, so this is like that more or less, but it's up to you how to build that, and you can do something in there. But automation is one of the biggest point. The next one, please. Then it comes to the outliers. You remember one of these green boxes where show me my critical users. And this is the thing I can't point out enough. So we're using machine learning to run over all the content which is in the identity management system. And again, as much is in there, as better it is. So bring all the application in there. So just to give an example, our biggest and greatest customers has more than 600, more than 800, up to 1100 applications connected to the system. This is doable. It's not a question of performance, it's working. Yeah, but you have all the information you need, and that makes sense. And the system runs over all this information. So we're looking for similarities or unsimilarities. So this is how we interpreted supervised machine learning. And we found out which identities are different from their peer group. So we're using the patterns to build peer group, and the guys who are different from their peer group, we show that up at outliers. So we found the structural outliers, which may be coming from a restructuring in the organization, or something is moving from one department to the other. But we found also the unstructured outliers, which might be orphaned accounts. So a typical honeypot for every hacker. So we found that, and you can jump in if you like, and can see the accounts, and can what is the difference on that. If you have the time for that, you can do that, or you can leave your CISO to do that if you like. Yeah, so it's nothing technical. It's just caring about the identities, or you can just click and hey, create an certification of that, and the system use all the different changes, use all these accounts which are reflected, and ask the related managers, is this okay for you? Yes or no. So you have something who should it know, and can make a decision if this is okay for him, yes or no. So this is when it comes to the outliers. Keep in mind, if you want to do this with your hand on the keyboards or with any kind of own programmed script, this might not be doable if you have all your identities and all the entitlements which they might have in account. Yeah, so we're talking about millions of entitlements, even if you have just a company from 3,000 users. So this is a big amount of data which you have to look for. So the next one, please. So when we have looked for the similarities, well, what we can now do, we can say, well, look, in your peer group, we found that a lot of guys has the same rights, yes or no. And with this information, we can make recommendations for a manager in that terms. And you know that when it comes to certifications, often enough managers say, well, I have no clue what that is. So where's the all button? How can I make this bulk load and throw this away in minutes? But this doesn't the company really help. Yeah, so that means we use the recommendations to find the differences in between the users and make a recommendation. Should this right be revoked, or should this right be approved? And we're very good in that. So we say 100% of the key recommendations are correct. So we figure that out with customers. It's not from us, the data coming from customers. And 93% of the remove are correct. And this is normal, I would say, because often enough you have a guy who has only one right. Yeah. So, but if you follow that thing, so we found out that the companies who are using these recommendations have 50% more corrections, mean get rid of entitlements for certain users. And this is already cleared out the rights which are after a revoke still accessed afterwards. Yeah, so that means this is a clean up number. And to have 50 more rights revoked, come on, this is a perfect number. Yeah, so that's exactly what you want to come a stick wide or a step closer to the least privilege thing. So the next slide, please.
I would like to add here, removal is not only a good idea because of bringing more security into your company. It could also be that having an access right leads to licenses and license costs. So removing accesses which are no longer needed can also directly lead to cost reductions. And therefore, that's also a very good effect which you can achieve with that.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, got that. And what we added in there, so just saw that this is an old slide, my fault, sorry for that. So what we added in that, if you go one back, please. So you see that slide where you're in the headlines, you have a lot of just, yeah, exactly. Thank you. You see in the headlines, you have this access profile and things like that. What we add in there, so no, when it's here other way, you see the identity, you see the description, you see oh, it's here. So you see that last activity account, it's not very good written down, but this last activity means we can give you an information. Is this access right in this review period? Is this used? When is this last used? That gives you at least, I know when it comes to work council, so in Germany, it's sometimes a little bit different because they all think that you can measure your work on that, but you can't really do that. We all know that, yeah. But it gives you at least an idea, is this right really used? And this is very close to that what Ulrich mentioned. So if this is never used in the change period, well, maybe you add it or you leave it for the next period, but in the next period, it's still no usage in here. You can revoke it, and maybe you can save some additional costs for licensing here. So totally true. So okay, but now to the next one. We have to speed up a little bit, I think. So role model. So I think a lot of people had tried to build up a role model and are more or less successful on that. But maybe you have recognized that maybe after half a year and after a year, so this role model is not in the same shape as it was a year before. Yeah, so you think something changed in there, and this is normal because companies are living elements. So there are new things coming up, there are new entitlements coming up, new applications are installed, rights go away and come new again. So that means over the time you will, beside the roles you already have, you have also new entitlements in there, means new access from the certain applications which are connected to the system. Normally wise, after half a year, after a year at least, you have to reshape your role model in terms of you look which rights or which access rights do I need in this role to be a perfect fit for that what that meant for. But nobody will do this again because it was an annoying process and a burden process. You have to talk to so much people and it was really time consuming to bring that together. So nobody really is going that again and again and again. And this is the moment where AI again jumps in, and what our machine learning is doing, we permanently control which identities have which roles and which entitlements. And if you found the same entitlement and the same role together on an identity, we give you an idea and say, look here, and this is what the role with entitlement updates, where the system said, look, I found the following entitlements to this very identities with the same role. Doesn't it make sense to put this entitlement in the role to be resharpened? So, and this is what the system doing every day. So that means it's relatively easy for you to keep your role model really on, let's say, on status quo, yeah, on state, up to date at the end, yeah. This helps you a lot when it comes to certifications. This tries to avoid a role explosion because sometimes after a year you say, well, maybe I need new roles, so I put all this stuff in new role and add it to the user, and after 2 or 4 years, the user have, instead of between 5 and 10 roles, maybe 25 roles, which doesn't help very much, yeah, to be on clearance. So this is where also IE jumps in and help you to clarify the role model and gives you, let's see, gives you more information that you can make a smart decision if it's necessary, yes or no. But without this information, you have no clue where roles and entitlements are the same on an identity. This is hard to find. Yeah. Okay, the next one. And this is the supplier management, which I already told. So supplier management or the external stuff, so we learned this is totally different. So an identity management system, I would say per definition, cares about the access. Yeah, it's identity and access management. So which identity needs which access on which system, yeah, on which circumstances. This is what identity management is. When you talk about an employee management or an external employee management, you have to know what kind of employee is this, what skill does he has, for which information or for which company, for which department in my company should he work, or if the company is bigger, for which location or in which part of the company he should work, who is responsible for those guys. Do I allow someone from my supplier or from my consultant companies to create new guys in there? So this is a totally different thing. So not jumping direct in your identity management system, but in a separate module. And this is what we deliver with the supplier management. So you can do all that stuff, can do your own certifications, can do your own workflows on that, whatever you like. And in the very moment when you say, but now you get a work order, you have to work for a department or for a guy here in my company, let's say for 4 weeks or for 6 weeks or for half a year. And in that very moment, this guy is created in the identity management system and get all the rights he needs to make this fulfillment. This is how we try to fulfill this, to get more and better control over the supply chain. This is our way to do that. Okay, and the next one, maybe it's if you want to take over.
Yes, thank you, Klaus. So we now had a look into several of these measures and how to handle them. These are the ones which are marked in green on this slide. But nevertheless, there are some more which have to be taken into account. And we are preparing here some kind of ideas how you could fulfill this. For example, incident management could be improved by using a security information event management system, and you can then send all the log files coming from SailPoint directly to that CM system and reacting on it. Or, for example, the use of cryptography and encryption is highly recommended in the directive. Therefore, it's very important that you follow this rule for each kind of module or software system which you are using inside your company. And as already mentioned at the very beginning, all should be follow the zero trust approach. Don't trust anything, and ensure that all your employees and also your administrators are trained well and on the newest state of what they have to keep. Then it's ensured that they will follow the directive measures. That fits very good to one question which already came in, whether MFA or PAM is mentioned in the directive to be kept, which is asked by Ignacio Swampato. Hopefully I pronounced the name right. Forgive me if not. And yes, it's absolutely the case that especially multi-factor authentication is mentioned in one of the measures explicitly. So that means that you really should use MFA, and it's highly recommended to use it everywhere, but at least for everything which is really critical. Additionally, you are asking for if PAM is mentioned explicitly. Privileged access management is not directly mentioned as the wording, but in the things which are mentioned regarding the risk management, it's a very good idea to have a PAM system or a PAM module in place and having that connected to your IGA system, because that will additionally bring you more security into avoiding the risk to be breached.
And maybe some adds from the SailPoint point of view. So everything what SailPoint is doing is always keeping integration in mind. So we're not a fan of get rid and replace. That's not ours. So we know that identity or IT is only working together, not against. Yeah, so that means we do everything which is doable to integrate in existing systems. So for PAM, for example, that means we have PAM connectors. We can connect to Beyond Trust, to CyberArk, how all you are call them. We can read on the vaults. We can show you as an entitlement how the vaults are there. And we respect that, so we don't get rid of anything. So we can control this in terms of certifications and things like that. So when it comes to MFA, we are a service provider, not an identity provider. So we can let's say be part of any kind of MFA which you want to use. So inside of SailPoint, for example, we're using for single sign-on Azure, and we're using for multi-factor authentication Duo. So this is a standing thing on us. So every time I have to connect to the system, I have to use MFA, which is normal if you have a single sign-on in place. So yeah, this one key to the kingdom means you have to do something MFA. And I see in our customer space more and more than MFA, it gets more and more normal. So it's not longer in terms of, oh, this is too important, we can't avoid it. I think everyone in the meantime has understood that it makes sense to do that. and all the stuff like all the Googles on this world. So they help us, even if you are on a gaming platform like Steam or like Ubisoft, whatever, they also have multi-factor authentication in there. So that means also your kids, or even if yourself are playing, you understand that multi-factor is it's worth to connect or to safely at least your gaming account, yeah, which normally someone might say, well, come on, a gaming account, yeah, who should care about? But we all know that there's a lot of value in some gaming accounts, and it's, yes, you have multi-factor account modification, and we've also for that. So that means MFA should be part of any kind of identity management system. And yes, it's not named, like Ulrich said, it's not named directly in the NIS2 requirements, but I think it's a basic thing, at least when it comes to some kind of zero trust initiative. At least you need something, an MFA in there. That's for sure. Does that answer your question? Hopefully you're still there. So we lost some guys. Okay, at the end, so time is running. The 7th of October is not so far away, and this is not what you can do overnight. Be not pure German, don't start on the 17th, so you have to be there on the 17th of October and it's starting on that. And keep in mind, so you will be measured till then. And it's there, it's honest what they are doing. And if you get breached after the 7th of October and you don't have to do anything against that, have not any plans in mind, and have done nothing, you will be punished twice. Keep that in mind.
So that means that the NIS2 directive is already valid today, but
Correct.
You will not be punished until the legal or the law of your country will be set up, but at least until the 17th of October it has to be done. And therefore you're for sure affected until from the 7th of October beginning in this year, independently from where you are in the European Union.
Correct.
So hopefully you have understood now a little bit better what it means, what is written in NIS2, and how you can make it more easy for you to fulfill the NIS2 directive by using IGA, MFA, PAM, or anything coming out of this sector to ensure that you can follow the 10 measures mentioned in Article 21. Klaus, any adoptions at the end?
No, that's fine. So I burned all my powder. So I would say that that's it.
Perfect. Thank you for the great presentation. So we have 5 minutes left for questions. So if you have questions, use the time now, type it in the chat, and then we can answer them. I think the first one you already answered, Klaus, yes. And maybe there's another one. I don't really know how to start to get NIS2 compliant. What is your advice?
Say it again, please. Didn't get the question fully.
I don't really know how to start to get NIS2 compliant. What is your advice?
Yeah, this is, so I know this is really hard. So I know in Austria, the government sent around message if a company is related to NIS2. In Germany, unfortunately, you have to figure out by yourself if this is true or not. So, well, I would say companies like ICC will give you good advices if you fall under this directive. So this is, I would say, Ulrich might be the perfect person to make a workshop with you that you can figure out if this is related to us, yes or no. This is one point. And on the other thing, in parallel, you can start with this maturity assessment just to get your own picture, or to get a real picture where you really are, that you can know, or that you know where you have to start from. That makes sense to do that. And then I would say step by step, keep the big picture in mind where you want to go, and then step by step do the first things. Yeah, starting with MFA, starting with a single sign-on, and then more and more. So an identity management system gives you a lot of opportunities in which direction you want to go. And partners like ICC will give you a perfect idea where to start best when they know from where to start. So have this maturity assessment or the results of that in mind and talk about that. And then we have a good partner and can follow those advices.
Great. And next one is, how can I ensure to be NIS2 compliant?
Well, if you don't get breached, you are compliant.
Correct. And if you implemented
kidding.
all the things what Klaus has mentioned in the last hour, I think then it's really ensured that you follow the least privileged principle, that you have a zero trust architecture in place, and that you use all the functionalities an IGA system is providing to you. I think then at least it's ensured that you have followed the NIS2 directive, and you don't have to be afraid that you will be breached or you will have a risk or that some kind of breach or risk on your supplier chain will affect you, because at least you are not responsible completely for your supplier. So it could happen that the supplier will be breached, but maybe that will not have any kind of end effect to your business. Then everything is fine.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Then thanks for bringing some light into that topic. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. And yeah, this is now the end of our session. I wish everybody a great rest of the day and talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Thanks for your time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.